Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with cartoonist, comics creator Kevin Fagan. Kevin, thank you for jumping in, joining, and that chair looks very comfortable.
Yeah, it is kind of comfortable. Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thanks for saying yes. Folks out there probably know you best for a comic strip called Drabble, but glad to talk about the work that you've done, the work that is to come in process, and where folks can find your work. Before we
Mhm.
do that, though, curious about what connected you with visual storytelling.
I'm sorry, I kind of bleeped out there. What was the last question?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just asking what connected you with visual storytelling.
With visual storytelling. Well, that's an interesting way to put it. I've been a comics fan all my life, and so I grew up reading comics. And I drew for fun when I was a kid, and I drew a project in high school where I made my own comic book.
Hmm.
Now, it wasn't a long story like a Spider-Man thing. It was just a collection of basically comic strips. And it got some attention. And from that, a year later, when I went to college, a friend who was in that class said that his sister is the editor of the school paper. They're looking for a cartoonist. Would you like to submit something to them? And I said, oh, no, I couldn't imagine it would go over well. And he said, well, they're really desperate. So this is a good opportunity. So I did. And they took me on at the staff at Saddleback College for 2 years. I went up to Sacramento State for another 2 years and showed my work to the newspaper editor there. They liked it as well, invited me to join the staff. So one of the local newspapers in town at Sacramento, the Sacramento Union, saw my work and invited me to join their staff, well, on a freelance basis. So I wasn't really joining the staff, but they started running my cartoons.
Hmm.
Um, I read a book called Peanuts Jubilee that commemorated the 25th anniversary of Peanuts, and I knew that Charles M. Schulz lived in Northern California, not far from Sacramento, well, a couple hours. Um, and I wrote him a letter, and I said, I sent him samples of my work, and I said, I would like to be a cartoonist. What do I do? And he sent me back an actual letter that was not a form letter. He said, first of all, it's not me you have to impress with your artwork. It's an editor somewhere.
Hmm.
Um, and along with a couple of other things, he sent a Xeroxed sheet, copied sheet of all of the major newspaper syndicates with their addresses, um, and said, start contacting these people, which is exactly what I did. And it turns out, to make a long story a little shorter, um, that about 9 months after that, I got a contract offer from United Feature Syndicate, which at the time I think was the largest newspaper syndicate, and they are also the syndicate that syndicated Peanuts. So there was
Hmm.
an immediate connection there, and that's how it all started. So I didn't really set out to do this, but it's amazing the opportunities that kind of come up when you're not expecting them. And that's exactly what happened all the way along. So I signed my contract with them when I was 21.
Wonderful, wonderful,
Drabble
wonderful.
debuted shortly after that.
Well, Drabble, I know, is a story of family life and humor and daily interactions. So I'm curious about the kinds of stories that you're drawn to tell and drawn to share.
Well, stories are fun to tell in the comic strip, but not everything I do is a story. Most of the cartoons that I draw stand alone. In fact, even if they're in a story, they need to stand alone because not every newspaper reader sees the entire series that might go on for a week or two. So
Hmm.
every cartoon has to stand on its own. Um, but it is funny to tell stories because it develops the characters of your comic strip. It's funny to get your characters in situations that they don't know how to get out of, and it's entertaining for the writer to do something like that. Imagine all these things that can happen.
Hmm.
So anyway, so that's what I do. So most of the time it's just a standalone gag each day, Every once in a while, I'll tell a story that will go on for a week or two or three.
Yeah. Do you have particular moments in your career, particular um, sort of arcs or periods where it's been some of your favorite creating?
Periods of time. Um, I don't think so. I don't know that there's one certain period that stands out. Um, I like to think that it just hopefully continues to improve.
Hmm.
Um, I have been looking back. I write a newsletter or Substack in which I show originals that I've done in years past, and I pull out um, strips from various years of whatever the date is that I'm publishing the newsletter. So you can see what I was doing in 1980, 1990, 2002, whatever. Um, and I have noticed that the strips from the 90s have been entertaining me a lot. So I don't know what was going on. Maybe I had a young family. I don't know. Maybe that inspired a lot of stuff. Um, but I have been looking back at that and thinking, oh, man, I was kind of funny back then. Anyway,
I guess working on a comic strip, it's sort of a long span medium, but then you also get to look back and it's sort of a series of mementos for you as well.
yeah, yeah. You know, I can kind of, I remember what I was doing during all of this time. Some
Mhm.
strips I look back on and I can barely remember drawing, but most of the time I can remember what generated the idea, and I remember what I was doing at that time, whether it was coaching little league or, my kids going to college or getting a dog or whatever. I remember the times of life that I was in. And so it
Mhm.
is kind of interesting. And I've often thought, it's kind of almost like having a diary. Um, I think one day if my kids or grandkids or any future generations ever go and look through my work, they'll get a pretty good idea of who I was and what was going on in my life.
It's a personal history.
Yeah, it is.
So speaking of going to places and looking, that's one of the things that I usually ask about is uh, current creative attention as well as spaces where people can go. I believe, is it Go Comics? Is that right?
GoComics.com is my syndicate's website. And on that website, they have all of the cartoons that they publish.
Hmm.
So if
Hmm.
you go to gocomics.com/Drabble, today's Drabble strip will come up. And it also has a calendar feature where you can go and pick a date from years past and see what strip ran on that date. So it's kind of fun if you're a comics fan
Hmm.
to check
Hmm.
that out. But that's one place that you can see Drabble. Drabble's still in uh, over 100 newspapers across the country and in various other countries. So some people can read it in the LA Times still, or various newspapers across the country. But those are the two main places right now where you can see it.
And I imagine the creating continues as you continue to share strips.
It absolutely does. My 45th anniversary with Drabble is coming up next month, and I've been thinking about the date of the anniversary, thinking I really ought to, because I've never mentioned it in the past or drawn attention to it. But I thought 45 years is kind of big. I'd like
Uh-huh.
to do a strip that's a little special. Now that's an impossible task when you approach something from that angle. I want to do something special. Good luck. You're not going to do anything special. Um, so I wasn't coming up with any good ideas, and all of a sudden today I had just kind of a flash of something that might be interesting. And so, but it was a little technical. I needed my wife's computer help to kind of help me bring this about.
Mhm.
So we've been working on that today. So that'll run on March 5th, the 45th anniversary of Drabble. But it's kind of fun when something like that happens because I wasn't expecting much. Because I'm serious when I say it. I so many times I've wanted to do something that people will find meaningful
Yeah.
or to commemorate a really special occasion in a good way. And most of the times I can't come up with anything. But I find that when I'm not trying, that's when I get a lot of attention and people write. talk about how meaningful certain cartoons are, but it tends to come about when I'm not trying.
You never know what sticks. You never
That's
know.
right.
Well, congratulations on the upcoming 45th anniversary. And thank you so much for the conversation. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure that listeners know about?
No, I don't think so. Check it out at Go Comics, or you can also go to drabble.substack.com and get a free subscription there if you want to read our newsletter. And that's it. See you in Funny Papers.
Well said. Great line. Great line. Thank you so much, Kevin, and glad to talk anytime.
All right. Thank you, Jason.